Morning. I'm on, I think. At least the power says I am. Okay. We're continuing our study through selected passages in the book of Hebrews. Last week we looked about live in faith, how living in faith is a command. This week, similar in its approach, is persevering faith, how to persevere in life. I mean, really, that's what it's about, isn't it? I don't care where you're at in your current state of life. We all have to persevere to some degree or another. And I want to take just a brief look at last week and how the author, inspired by the Holy Spirit, brilliantly encourages us through creation, through Noah. We'll briefly look at that. Then we're going to look at the patriarchs, how we look at our heritage. And I say our heritage. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, this is your heritage, and this is your encouragement. Sometimes we step back and go, well, that's for them back there. No, that's for us right here, right now. Creation through Noah. Brief. Now, faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen, for by this our ancestors were approved. This is not necessarily a definition of faith, as we looked at last week. It's simply a description of what faith does. And that last part, for by this our ancestors were approved. You know, I look at my ancestors, and I looked at that last week, and I've been blessed with a godly heritage. Yesterday, at our home, we celebrated Lori's parents' 65th anniversary. Godly heritage. We're thankful for that. For by this they were approved. By faith we understand that the universe was created by the Word of God, so that what is seen may be made from things that are not visible. Something came out of nothing. And for most of us here today, that was an assumption when we were growing up. And then all of a sudden, Darwinism began to take hold in our school system, and we began to think we knew more. Recently, I heard some political discourse where the debate was over our healthcare system, was over vaccinations, and some were saying, well, you don't dare question science. And I love the response of one senator. He said, that's exactly what science teaches us to do, questions what's there. And we look at creation and we say, no, there's a creator. It's just, the design is far too critical. By faith, Abel offered a better sacrifice than Cain. We looked at last week. Abel's sacrifice was that of a blood sacrifice. Cain came to God thinking, my sacrifice is good enough. I got another way to God. And how many times have we engaged people and they base their life on this goodness standard, or better than standard, as I like to call it? Well, I'm better than that guy. And God will look at what No. Abel did exactly what God taught him to do and led him to do. Cain, on the other hand, said, my way is good enough. It never works that way. By faith, Enoch was taken away. He did not experience death. Before he was taken away, he was approved as one who pleased God. Think about that statement. Approved as one who pleased God. And then we see a summation. Now, without faith, it is impossible to please God, since the one who draws near to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. We go right back to creation. That God exists. And he rewards those who seek him. Creation through Noah. Now we want to take a look at Noah. By faith, Noah, after he was warned about what was not yet seen. Was not yet seen. You realize that until the time of Noah, there had never been a flood. People have never seen water coming down from heaven, i.e. rain. Now, we could use some right now. It's getting a little dry. But we assume that's the case. By faith, Noah, after he was warned. We learned that real quick, don't we, growing up? Or hopefully we learned that growing up. Sometimes I question that as I watch some children. It's like, where are your mom and dad in this thing? My parents, and Lori and I as parents, we gave consequences. But first we gave a warning. And Noah, after he is warned what had not yet been seen, there's a real step in faith with Noah. And motivated by godly fear, built an ark to deliver his family. The Greek word for godly fear means pious care. To have a pious or religious concern. That's what he was motivated by. There was something greater in Noah's life where that motivation was there, and he built an ark. And fortunately, we could go down and see a replica in Kentucky. And it's amazing, isn't it? When you think about it, when you see it, it really is impressive. And they did a great job replicating the dimensions and just the beauty of it. God gave Noah specific instructions on how to build that ark. It wasn't random. No, the best engineer, God. You build it this way. Isn't that amazing? How he did that. Then it says, by faith, he condemned the world and became an heir of righteousness that comes by faith. He condemned the world. This is a righteousness that came out of the basis of faith. I'm not righteous on my own. I'm not. My righteousness is imputed to me by God. Isn't that a wonderful statement? God imputes his righteousness, not based on anything you and I have done, but it's an imputed righteousness. He condemned the world. Why? He told them what was coming. The condemnation was sure. And at times as believers, we have to give a tough message that God came into the world to save sinners. And by the way, those that don't know him will perish. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. He condemns the world. And yet the righteousness that was given to him was imputed to him by God. A free and everlasting gift. What a gift. And it truly is a gift of God's grace and his grace alone. That's from creation to Noah. The readers were looking at this, the Hebrews, in that culture were under persecution. The temptation within their own camp was to go back. Let's mix and match a little bit. Let's say that we got to have circumcision. That'll take care of some things, right? And others were saying, no, that the Jews were saying, nothing to do with them. And yet we see the imputed righteousness that God gives. So they go back from creation to Noah. Now they deal with the faith of Abraham. You know the old song? Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. I won't sing any more than that. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's keep praising the Lord. Abraham. if you're a Jew. Father Abraham. By faith, Abraham, when he was called. How many times as a parent did you scream out for your children? Well, excuse me, you spoke loudly. Would you get in here? Would you get in here? Whether it was Janelle or Evan or Drew. I called you. What? No, then when I got a what like that, it's like, I'm not dealing with what? No, you heard exactly. By faith, Abraham, when he was called, obeyed and set out for a place that he was going to receive an inheritance. Abraham, I got a place for you to go. You need to set out. He sets out in faith because he was called and he obeyed. What a critical statement in our own faith, in our own life. Trust and obey. It's pretty simple. It doesn't say trust and explain me the whole story. Well, do you tell me exactly what's going to happen? Then maybe. No, God doesn't work that way. First and foremost, what has he given us? He's given us creation. Look out. See his hand. See his mercy. Trust and obey. It's not, Lord, trust and explain. It's trust and obey. He went out even though he did not know where he is going. The other night, Lori and I got invited to go down to Southgate and met with some old friends. And we had dinner at Hungarian Rhapsody. Well, it was Hungarian, but I won't say the experience was Rhapsody. The company was Rhapsody. We enjoyed them thoroughly. But because of traffic and everything else, now I spent 20 years as a salesman. Long before there was anything called, I got one of the first cell phones. It was mounted in my car, but it didn't have navigation on it. I had a pile of maps in the front of my car. I could tell you anywhere in Detroit where to go. Why? Because I just did it and did it and did it. And after a while, I knew where I was going. But because we went down there, we plugged it into the car. And all of a sudden, I get to the end of the Southfield. And boy, has Allen Park changed. Where that dumps off. It's been a while. It's changed a lot. And then I realized where I was at. Well, going back home, I put the ball game on. The Lord said, don't you want to tell us where we're going? And I somewhat indignantly said, dear, I know exactly where I'm going. I called on Ford Motor Company for many years. Now, it wasn't necessarily well received because of my tone. But in case of Abraham, he did not know where he was going. There's times when my wife will attest to, yeah, he says he knows where he's going, but he doesn't. By faith, he stayed as a foreigner, or literally, that I love the word in the King James, the idea of the sojourner. It's funny, there's a cashier at Myers at 8 in Haggerty, and I'll run in there and buy grapefruit juice early in the morning. And normally I do self-checkout, but if I see her there, her name is Sojourner. And she's tired of me saying, you know, I really love your name. I know you love my name. I said, do you know what that means? Somebody that is a foreigner in the land of promise. We're all foreigners in the land of promise. Living in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, co-heirs of the same promise. Last night we had about 18 people at the house celebrating the 65th anniversary. My grandson was there, their great-grandson, their grandchildren were there. I'd love to tell you they all were heirs of promise. Some of them had chosen another way. But what an incredible thing. Living in tents. as did Isaac and Jacob, co-heirs of the same promise. For he was looking forward. You notice what it doesn't say? He was looking backwards. I mean, again, it's great to look back at our heritage, and it's great to look back at things that we weren't given or we weren't directed in. But the idea for the believer is to look forward to the city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Wow. The architect of the ark is going to build us a city. We've done some home improvement recently. Put some tile in the mud room and then the laundry room and then a small half bath. And the guys did a great job. I'm not going to lay tile. I don't do that. However, we had to take some vinyl wallpapering off. Well, that came off like that. But you know, with vinyl wallpapering, if you know what you're doing, you better take the glue off behind it. Because you're going to put latex paint over that, which what I was going to do. And I missed a few spots. God doesn't miss spots. He's the architect and builder is God. That's what he was looking forward to. Ultimately, the job turned out okay at home. Now I know where all the faults are. And I don't tell anybody. If you want to find them, let me know. No, we don't have any missteps in God's plan. Later on in Hebrews, it says in chapter 12, let us be grateful for the receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. I've told you this before, but every good wife has a finger that goes, you missed a spot. You missed a spot. And I'm thankful for that. Not initially, but ultimately I go back and fix it. That cannot be shaken. There's no pointing and say, God, you didn't do that right. No, not this city. And thus let us offer to God an acceptable worship, reverence of all, for our God is a consuming fire. We're going to receive a kingdom because the architect doesn't make mistakes. You can't go back and say that plan wasn't good. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive. Now, how did Sarah first respond when she heard she was going to have a child or was told she was going to have a child? She laughed. And a lot of solid theologians argue, is the object here Sarah, or is it really the faith that Abraham brought to Sarah? Either way, I don't think it's that big of a deal. The point is, they both had faith. Even when she was past the age, and she considered him faithful who had promise. The gift of children is due to faith on part of both Abraham and Sarah. He's driving home their heritage, how people lived, how people stepped out in faith. Therefore, from one man and him as good as dead. I've always loved that. Good as dead. How many times have you felt like, yeah, well, I'm done with that? Were born descendants as many as the stars of heaven and as many as the innumerable grains of sand by the seashore. I used to look at that and say, wait a minute. Israel's just this tiny little state, nation state. If you know Jesus today, you're great as hand. You're his follower. Why? Because Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. I understand that now. It's for the entire creation. What did God say to Abraham? I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven as the sand is on the seashore. Can you imagine Abraham scratching his head? I'm a foreigner, a sojourner in this land. They really don't want me here, by the way. And he gives me this incredible promise. As your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies. Verse 13. These all what? Died in faith, not having received the things promised. What a gyp, huh? I got gypped. If you ever given a present to your son or your daughter and they look at it, they don't quite, well, my son did one time. I got gypped. Don't you say that to your mother, I'll tell you that. All those things that were promised. Why? But having seen them and greeted them from afar. That's what faith does. Faith gives us the eyes to see what God is going to do. Why? Because we get to look back and see what he's done. It's and in both. It's not either or. Having seen them from afar and greeted them, having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. This is not your home. If you think it is, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Even in your own faith, you're going to not experience what God has given us. That we have something so much better. Strangers and exiles on earth. You don't own anything, by the way. Because we're strangers and exiles. We look forward to something so much greater. You know what happens when that is a hallmark of our life? We live so much differently. We hold things loosely. We look forward to something greater. For people who speak thus make it clear that they're seeking a homeland. Not my house on Forest Court. Not my house on 20497 Fox Street. Not my house at 19453 Glenmore. Not my house on 210 Eileen. Not my house at 214 North Centerville. I got them all right, didn't I, Mark? Those were my homes. That's not what we're talking about. If they had been thinking of what that land which they had gone out, they would have opportunity to return. Isn't that interesting? When you put your mind on things of the past and you realize that's not your home, or that was my home, you look back and you're sorely disappointed. But as it is, they desire a better country. That is a heavenly one, whose architect is God himself. Wow. Think about it. Think about the glory of that. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God. For he's prepared for them a city that cannot be shaken, that cannot be moved. What an awesome thing to think about. What an awesome thing to go to a funeral of a believer that really loves the Lord. What a joyous celebration. What a secure thing to say, she or he knew Jesus. They're in the presence of God. That's a glorifying thing. Sadly, I've done lots of funerals of people that, at least humanly speaking, I didn't see any hope in their life. I'm not sure they knew the Lord. And then, happily, God's given me the opportunity to do many funerals of those that live faithfully for God. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. And he had received the promise, which was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac, your offspring shall be named. Isaac said to his dad, where's the sacrifice? Abraham knew. In fact, this was so critical. Jesus, in debating the Sadducees, said this. And the Sadducees came to him, who say that there is no resurrection. And they asked him a question. Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife, but leaves no children, that man must take the widow and raise up the offspring. And the 7 left no offspring. Last of all, the woman also died. In the resurrection, when they rise again, whose wife shall she be? For 7 had her as wife. Jesus said to them, it's not the reason. Is this not the reason you are wrong? Because neither you know the scriptures nor the power of God. Now think about that statement. That is really, really powerful. For when they rise from the dead, they will neither marry nor be given in marriage, but they are like angels in heaven. As for the dead being raised, have you not read in the book of Moses, which, by the way, we're referencing this whole time back in Genesis, in the passage about the bush, how God spoke to him saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. God makes a promise. And if he doesn't fulfill it here and now, it will be fulfilled in the time to come. Because God keeps his promises. Back in Genesis, on the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw in the place at distance. Then Abraham said to his young man, stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over here and worship, and we'll come back. He was prepared to offer up his own son. Why? Because he knew that God was a God of the living, and that God kept his promise. Whether it's here or now, you understand the promise is still fulfilled. He doesn't pull back. He considered that God was able to raise him from the dead. He knew it. He knew it. He lived it. Isaac didn't understand. Do you think that impacted Isaac later on when his father died? Do you think that impacted him on how he was to live and raise his own children? From which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. If God makes a promise to an individual and that individual dies before it's fulfilled, God is obligated to resurrect that individual to fulfill the promise. God is obligated to each one of us. Whether he returns today or in this moment, or God takes one of us home, God will resurrect us. That's the promise we've been given. That's the promise the Hebrews would have heard. Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in the thicket by the thorn. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered as a burnt offering. Wow. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob. It's Abraham. Now Isaac. How many times do you think he told the story to his children about the day his father was ready to sacrifice him? How many times do you think he said, there just happened to be a ram caught in a thicket? It just happened. No. Wow. You talk about imparting faith to your children. He blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of his sons, Joseph, the sons of Joseph, and he worshiped leaning on the top of his staff. Think about it for a moment. Now, the leaning on the top of its staff is significant. You have a frail old man. Lori and I were walking down 8 Mile this morning with the dog. There's an old man. I don't mean just me, older than me. We're both in that old category. And he walks like this. And of course, I got the dog, and our dog is well trained. She's not aggressive, but she's big. And it's fun to watch the Indians in our neighborhood. Indians don't like big dogs. That's not a racist statement. That's, believe me, when they see her, they get way over. This old man goes like this. And I finally have learned to let him know we're coming. Oh, hey, we're here. Jacob was leaning on the top of his staff. Wow. Faithful. He blessed the sons of Joseph. Why? Abraham told him about the promised land. Isaac carried it down. And it went on and on and on. And he knew it. And he knew enough to lean on his staff and bless them. He could have said, well, I'm too old for this. Like the man walking down the street on 8 Mile. There's been some days I could have just ran him right over accidentally, thinking he saw me coming. Not Jacob. He leans on his staff and he looks forward. By faith, Joseph. Think about everything Joseph went through with his brothers. Think about how God delivered him. Think about the power and prestige and honor he received from Pharaoh. All of that. Do you think he might have been tempted to say, I'm somebody? We've seen it happen, haven't we? Get a little power, get a little accolade. Next thing you know, you think you're somebody. As he was nearing the end of his life. That's a beauty, isn't it? I'm going to encourage you. As you get older, you're nearing the end of your life. What? That's not an encouragement. Oh, yes, it is. What does it do? It causes us to look back on what's of value. Mention the exodus of the Israelites. Jacob, do you remember? Do you know what we went through? He's reminding him of God's promises and gave instructions concerning his bones. Why is that significant? It's very significant because God made each one of us in his image. The body is significant. He says, no, take my bones. What did he say to him? He said, Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will certainly come to your aid and bring you up from the land which he swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Joseph made the sons of Israel take an oath. Uh-oh. You better do as I'm telling you. When God comes to your aid, you are to carry my bones up from here. What a promise. What a fulfillment. That he would know enough, by faith, take my bones out of Egypt. Bring them back to what was promised to Abraham. Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. Are you one of them? Hopefully. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob died without seeing promises realized. They trusted God, had a heavenly home for them. Maybe a phone too now, who knows? The Lord summoned Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. But he didn't shrink back in unbelief. Persevering faith. This is what I love about this section. None of them realized the ultimate until they died. What a gyp, huh? What do you mean? I don't get it now. No, you don't get it now. It's much better in God's timing. And finally, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph on their deathbeds didn't see God's promises fulfilled yet. But they spoke about the future in confidence. How confidently are you living today? How joyfully are you living because of that confidence? It comes from persevering faith. A faith that says, God, I'm just a sojourner. I'm just passing through. This is not my home. Father, I thank you and praise you for these patriarchs. Thank you for Noah, Father, who set out, obeyed when there was no rain, when there was no floods. Thank you for Abraham and his sons. Father, we ask now that as we go about our week, that we'll persevere in our faith. We'll recognize the hope we have in you. And all God's people said,